And City Attorney, anything else I would need to do to kind of go on to the next agenda item?
If I could quickly report out
Please.
from closed session, please. The City Council has reconvened from closed session, having discussed item 3A through 3E as listed on the agenda, with no discussion being had of item 3F.
Good deal. Thank you. Alrighty. So at this time, I would ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Hasselbrink, and then please stay standing for the invocation by Councilmember Mark Turco.
On this Constitution Day, if you can join me as we renew our pledge and all of its freedoms to this country as it stands for. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to start by giving thanks for all we have, for the opportunity to represent our great city, for the love in our community. Whatever one's opinions, political viewpoint, and faith, we're all part of the same community and must work together to keep our community safe, prosperous, and loving. I want to specifically give thanks to our first responders, including the Los Alamitos Police Department. They risk their lives to keep all of us safe and to help us feel safe. I would also like to give thanks to all the volunteers in our community who donate their time, money, and efforts to help the less fortunate and help make our community great. And I want to thank my colleagues on the City Council for acting in what they believe are the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead and sit down. We'll come up for the presentation.
Come on, we just got one.
I have an idea. I can't get it right now. I noticed that. Well, you get what you pay for. You gotta look at it that way.
Alrighty. Good evening. One of our first items, or our only item tonight for presentations, is that we're going to have our fire chief go through a process here. We're basically presenting a proclamation to the city for October 7th through the 13th, which is Fire Prevention Week. And what I'd like to do is to have our chief talk a little bit about what that means to our community and some of the actions that our police and fire department is actually taking on to help us out there. Chief.
You didn't tell me how to talk. So Fire Prevention Week is something that obviously we hold near and dear to our heart. It gives us a chance to focus on fire prevention and fire safety throughout the whole year. Every year we have a theme. This year's theme is look, listen, and learn. Look means to look for places that fire can start in your house. Listen is listen for the smoke alarms, and learn is to learn 2 ways out of your homes. There's more. We'll have more information available for you at our open house. We're having an open house October 13th at Fire Station 2. This flyer will be available on your website. We'll be able to, if you come to the fire station, we'll be able to give you handouts and other things to help focus on Fire Prevention Week, for Fire Prevention Month, but also just fire prevention in general for the year. So, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the fire alarm checks? I know Councilmember Hasselbrink went out there.
Okay. What we do periodically is we identify neighborhoods in our cities that are where we find a need to have smoke alarms installed. So this year we're doing a smoke alarm installed at Carrier Row. Years past we've done it at a mobile home park, and the other community escapes me. But we identify areas by listening to our firefighters that go into homes. When they see homes that either don't have smoke alarms, or they have the batteries pulled, they communicate to us, and we identify those areas, and we mark them on our calendar to install. So this Saturday we're going to hit Carrier Row. There's 300 homes that we're going to offer to install smoke alarms into the houses, and we do that at no charge. It's in cooperation with Kitty Alarm Company and Home Depot. So it's a really good program. So.
Thank you. Yeah. So on behalf of the City Council and as Mayor of Los Alamitos, I want to go ahead and proclaim Fire Prevention Week October 7th through 13th. And with that, Chief, I'd like to give you this.
Thank you.
My idea was leave signs alone.
You think?
Yeah. Yes, she plans to. Yes, I got a text at 3 o'clock on what she plans to say. She is not for the lawsuit.
Okay, good evening. So now what we're going to do is move on to oral communications. At this time, any individual in the auditorium can go through and speak on any item on the City Council agenda with subject matter jurisdiction within the City Council. You're limited to not more than 5 minutes per speaker. Thank you. Hi there, how you doing?
Hello. I'm a resident of Los Alamitos, and I'm asking the City Council to consider revising Code 5.04250 regarding the minimum income for a business license, mainly because I've had trouble for several years. I earn less than $1,800, maybe $1,500 gross income. Tiny business. I just signed up for a business license because I thought it was the right thing to do. And this code asks us to, that says that the business license fees are exempt if you earn that little bit of money. Well, I didn't know all the rules. And one of the things the code says, I've been fined $500 for me opening up my, signing up for a license, and they're going to get ready to fine me some more. The first time was because of my lack of knowledge of your rules, saying that you're going to get fined if you don't tell the city. But I signed up for the license, and I made less than $1,800. That's the minimum income. I also, this year, for the license for this next coming year, I received the license in the mail, and I called and I asked, what do I do? Because I've been communicating with the city and HDL, which is the Business License Division up in Fresno, and to no avail. And I sent in my affidavit, and I called just before Labor Day, Friday before Labor Day, and they said they hadn't received it, so they're going to fine me. And I think that's really unfair, because being fined $200 when I only make probably this year $1,500 is really outrageous. And I think that the ordinance 334, section 2, I can't read my handwriting, 1977, could use some revision for people like me. And that's what I have to say, and I don't know how to request a waiver. I think I just have to close my little business and move to another city or something, because this is ridiculous. Thank you.
So do me a favor, when the meeting's over, see our city manager and give him your name and number and all that. We'll talk to you and see if we can help you out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Shelley.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Shelley Henderson. I'm here as chair of the Los Alamitos Chamber of Commerce, taking care of business. I wanted to bring your attention and those of the viewers to a few of the new members of the chamber since this council last met. We have Game Changer Physical Therapy. Moya Legal Services signed up, and my favorite is Kansas City Barbecue. We had a ribbon cutting for that fine establishment. It's up on the southwest corner of Cerritos and Los Alamitos Boulevard. I highly recommend the ribs, but no one that I have talked to has had anything to complain about going there. So if you have a chance, please check out that new business, Kansas City Barbecue, southwest corner of Cerritos and Los Alamitos Boulevard, catty corner from the high school. I would also like to invite everyone to our next networking breakfast. We had a fabulous networking breakfast at Madeira's, where all of the candidates got up and talked. Lots of positive feedback about that. Everybody thought it went very well. I would like to commend each and every one of the candidates for sticking to the time limit and no personal remarks directed at any of the other candidates. So it was a good, clean candidate forum. Thank you very much. Also, we will be having a Young Professionals Mixer in October. Please watch for more information about that. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Hey, Larry.
Hi, Larry Strother with LoSal TV. Just want to let you know that that candidates forum, or wasn't a forum, but the meeting with the chamber, that will be on the air beginning this weekend. Probably Thursday night, I'll probably put it up. I'm just finishing editing it right now. So that will be on the air. And on the, and then John did some interviews with the school council, the school board elections. So those should also be on the air in the next coming week or so. Also want to let you know, Taste for LoSal will be coming up October 13th. And just want the community to know, have over 40 restaurants, including the aforementioned Sims. And I just, because we have to sample these things to make sure they aren't poisonous, I was there and they had some very, very good brisket. And the pulled pork is amazing. So I want to let you know there. But Wahoo's is going to be in. Obviously Mama's, Griffin's Grill, a lot of restaurants in LoSal. Got restaurants in Seal Beach and in the Rossmoor's area of Seal Beach as well. So over 40 at this point. My goal is to try and get 50, since this is technically the 50th anniversary of the actual building of Los Alamitos High School, not the school itself, because it had 1 year, Pine School. But anyway, hopefully I can get up to 50, and we'll see what happens. But just want to let you know about the candidates meetings. Those will be on the air. And I'm also going to try and do individual meetings with the candidates. It's just been difficult between my Taste of LoSal schedule and stuff to try and hook up with them, but I will be doing that very, very soon. So.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Henry Josephsburg, as you will recall, I'm one of the plaintiffs in the pending lawsuit. The message I'd like to bring today is politics. Politics and civic government don't mix very well, or at least they haven't here. And I'd like to take the politics out of what's going on. I want to talk about good governance. I want to talk about respecting our constitutions, and I say that plurally, United States and State of California, and talk to you very briefly about the expense that you've been incurring in defense of this lawsuit. It's not appropriate under the Lockyer case, as I'm sure you know by now, for a city government to take upon itself to determine what is and is not constitutional. The lawsuit doesn't talk about whether you're right or wrong. You could be right. I doubt it. I'd like to think you're wrong. You could be right. It doesn't matter in this lawsuit. What matters is that you've exceeded your authority as civic leaders to challenge the constitutionality of a state law by simply passing an ordinance. You've spent a lot of money, depending on whom you listen to. It's $60,000 to $100,000. It's a lot of money, and you've progressed nowhere. You've caused a great deal of expenditure of money, and it's time, I think, for you seriously to consider not responding at all to the case and let it go by default. It's inexpensive, it's cheap, and it will come to the correct result. It will end the lawsuit. You do nothing, and the court will simply determine the case on the merits of what's presented in the complaint, and that's it. You won't win. I'm not saying this is a win-lose. I'm saying that passing the ordinance simply violates the constitutional principles set out by the California Supreme Court in Lockyer and in several other cases. To that end, I would also commend you to the idea that the way this has all been handled, in addition to simply being legally wrong, is injurious to our city, not only in the expenditure of money, but also in how it's divided us. We need, at this point, to come together. We need to articulate our various views as to how the city is run, and I'm very pleased to hear from the Chamber of Commerce how well the candidates forum went. That's how it should be. Finally, I'm still curious about the GoFundMe that was established to supply money to fund the defense of the lawsuit. I think, as a Los Alamitos resident and business owner, I'm entitled to know exactly who's giving money to that sort of activity. I don't know off the top of my head if simply a PRA will result in getting me that information, or whether it's something that the City Council should discuss and determine whether to release that information. One final thing. I'm sorry, I said finally, but one final thing. When last I was here, Dean Gross indicated that he had spoken with the city attorney about the letter from the attorney in Santa Monica about districting, and opined that it was extortionate, and also reported that the city attorney agreed with him. I have to say that giving that kind of advice, if that happened, I object to having my city attorney give advice to another private citizen about whether something is extortionate or not. I have enough experience with demand letters to know that the letter that you were sent is not extortionate. Once again, whether I'm right or whether Mr. Gross is right isn't the point. My point is that a private citizen should not be getting private legal advice from the City Council. Unless you have some questions, thank you all.
Thank you. Next. Good evening, Dean.
Good evening. Maybe to clarify the last comment, I didn't ask the city attorney for advice. I asked his opinion on whether or not he thought the way the letter was written was in fact extortion, and he agreed with me. I don't take that as legal advice because he wasn't paid any money to advise me. I'm here tonight to talk about consent calendar item H, and I don't know if that's going to be pulled for separate discussion or you want me to discuss it now, but I'd like to be able to have some dialogue regarding that particular item, and I don't believe this forum gives us the opportunity. So if you could pull item H for discussion, then I might be able to have a little dialogue with you on it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hey, Rob.
Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. My name's Rob Feldman. I live at 11162 Bennington Street in the beautiful city of Los Alamitos, in New Dutch Haven, the last tract that was built in Los Alamitos. I have a few things to chat about tonight. It's so nice to see people that I know and people recognize me. Even the city clerk smiled at me and said, "Oh my gosh, where you been?" So I want to first, as I always do when I come up here, because you're sitting up there and I'm here as a concerned citizen. And I thank the four of you. I don't know this gentleman yet at all. I've lived in Los Al for 30 years. I have no idea who he is. So I'd like to, because I know he's running. So that will be part. I'm going to talk about a few things, so try to bear with me. I'm going to try to talk quickly and succinctly so you understand where I'm coming from. The first thing, and it's more, you know me as more sometimes emotional. I don't know the law like this gentleman did who came and spoke before. So what I want to speak to is not the politics of it at all, you guys. Not that it has nothing to do with it at all, but when I hear, when we talk about what you have spent and what Councilman Murphy had talked about, $91,000, and that the fact if it goes to trial, we could lose $2 million, and if we lose, we can end up paying the ACLU $8 million and bankrupt the city, and then God forbid we could be part of Cyprus, which I wouldn't like. But so that's where my emotion comes. I would love to see the passion again that you all have done for so long to people like us in New Dutch Haven tract. Our trees haven't been cut in 5 years. Our streets are absolutely awful. The asphalt's coming up, the things are doing, I'm being told when I call, well, we don't have money, we don't have money, we don't have money. Well, we have money to do this, and whether I agree with it or not, that's why I said there's no politics to it. It's a lot of money for a small city like us. What are we? There's 32 cities in Orange County. We're the second smallest, but yet everybody thinks we're the largest because everybody knows Los Alamitos. So that's my comment. I would love the passion. When you guys put in the handicap stuff in front of that's fabulous. But there's a word for it, and I can't say it, where the cement is and where the streets cross. And it's been cracked for 10 years. People have tripped over it. I have water that sits like this where mosquitoes get in. And when I called and they said, oh, we don't have the money. But you guys have $91,000 to spend on this already, and it could be up to $2 million. I would love the passion that you guys showed years ago, like you're showing on this lawsuit, to me. You know, I mean, I'd love that you're up there and love that you try. You've come to the races, you've come to all that stuff. But now I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs. You know, and I hope that the people that are running for city council this year will understand that first thing. The second thing I want to comment is Councilman Hasselbrink told us to go see in Cyprus the workshop that is happening on the 13.1 acres of the racetrack. And if you don't think that this, you know, you were there, and I'm telling you, they have thrown Los Alamitos under the bus. Shea Homes is there, and then the other people that didn't get the senior homes in Cyprus were there. They all stood up and they all said, we want, Shea wants 220 homes, and he wants retail and movies and restaurants and blah, 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 and it's all gonna go on Cattell again. The other people said the same thing. When the question was asked, well, why don't you put it on Cerritos or do something up there? Oh, no, 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 it's gonna go on Cattell. Los Alamitos will bend over, no big deal. They have thrown you under the bus. Okay, so that, I sat there flabbergasted. There's also the signal on Enterprise that we have in writing that you have been so kind to provide that show that it's still viable and still there, that we sat in committee when Cottonwood and Costco and that whole craziness, and they said out loud, oh, Los Alamitos will bend over again. We'll get the signal. We got people moving into the senior homes that are absolutely, you know, have a lot of power, a lot of this. And I'm like, and I was the only one there. You're right. I'm not man of La Mancha. I'm going to get more people here. Believe me, I will. You all know I will. But I do it with loving, I mean, please, again, to the new people, uh-oh, it's flashing, new people that are going to be voting, that we're voting for, come on. How are you going to protect us to the best of your ability, knowing that we don't have much clout? But when the city of Cyprus sits there like I'm a deer with deer in headlights and looks at me, and when I talked to them about what was going on, they kind of went, yeah, tough, come after us. So be aware, and I'll be back. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Well, they're all way better public speakers than I am because I
Yeah.
don't like speaking in public, so I'm going to read.
Sure.
Marianne Quilty, I live in Rossmore Highlands. I'm here to also talk about the lawsuit because I'm just baffled that we're even considering moving forward on this issue. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. For Sanctuary City, against it, you have a fiscal responsibility to the citizens of Los Alamitos. I'm not an attorney, but I've been a controller for many years, and I've paid out on lawsuits, and I know how much these can cost. And I would love to hear Councilman Churko's estimate of what this is going to cost, as he is an attorney. In January, the mayor talked about pension problems and stated that city pension obligations are increasing $400,000 to $500,000 per year. So my question is, if we can't fully fund the pensions, how are we going to fund this? And if I was a city employee or the police force, I'd be furious about this, wondering, you know, this is my retirement that you're messing with. You know, and then personally, the GoFundMe, I was embarrassed by that. I had friends from all over the country sending me emails joking about the city needs to set up a GoFundMe page. And then there was that article in, I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, in the News Enterprise, talking about how it ended up getting corrected, but it said that the GoFundMe page had covered all of the legal costs to date. And then the city did issue a new statement saying that it hadn't, because by my estimate, it falls $62,000 short of paying what we've paid to date. And we're not even in the lawsuit yet. I mean, we're in the early stages. We're not where we're going to be spending. We could be spending $100,000 a month on legal fees. I mean, there are way better places we can be spending this money. I mean, the parks, you know, the roads, the alleys behind in Apartment Row, city hall repairs, police. I just don't see how any of you can justify spending this money on this lawsuit. And I know all of you personally, and I like you all, but you're making it hard for me to support any of you for re-election in November, knowing that we're going to be blowing this money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and close oral communications, and we're going to move on to council announcements. Councilmember Turco.
Sure. I attended the budget meeting on September 10th, the budget subcommittee meeting with Councilmember Hasselbrink. We discussed the final budget for 2017-2018, which is on today's consent calendar. I attended the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District meeting. The West Nile threat currently is at normal levels, but I'm sure most folks out there have noticed the mosquito abundance is above average. My ankles bear witness to that from being out on the soccer fields over the weekend. So residents are encouraged to follow the usual recommendations to try to cut down on mosquito populations, including the main one, eliminate any standing water around your house. I attended the Texas Hold'em fundraiser for the Casa Youth Shelter. It was a great event, though unfortunately my poker skills are not as good as I thought they were, because I got knocked out pretty early in the night. But it was a great event, great organization. It was a fundraiser for the youth shelter, and I know Mayor Edgar is heavily involved in that organization as well. And I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting, where I, along with all the other candidates for City Council, got to speak to the Chamber. I thought it was a nice event. All the candidates did a nice job, including, I think, 5 of the 6 are here, 5 of the 6 folks that are running. And I thought that was a great event. So thank you.
Good deal. Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you. I'd like to touch on a few subjects. One, please get ready to vote. You know, do what you need to do to get registered. There's no greater privilege in this country. When I see people in these countries that get to vote for the first time who stand in line for 3 days, and we can't even get a mail-in ballot to get 50% of the people in the state to vote. It's pathetic. Second of all, please leave the signs alone. People are putting up signs that are getting taken down. I don't know if it's for political reasons or they just don't like the politics, they don't like signs. We have 6 hardworking candidates putting up their own money. Please allow them the freedom of speech to get their names out there and leave their property alone. When I was new here, I used to speak a lot about piecemeal budgeting. We really don't do it anymore. Piecemeal budgeting is where you do one item. You say, oh, well, you know, we need this. But you miss the whole budget process where we kind of rank what's important. And that's with the little bit of money we have in the city that's discretionary, which is probably less than 2% of the total budget, we do get some discretion where the money goes. But when you do piecemeal budgeting, you don't look at the big picture. You just look at one piece and say, oh, we should do this for the parks. Well, that sounds good. But what about all the other items that got considered? I do have to say something here, because I didn't do it the last time and I regret it. My sister spoke tonight. She was the last speaker. She wasn't happy. Last time my other sister wrote a letter, I was accused of being giving her the words, okay? Which is not true. You all know, if I have an opinion, I'm not going to hide behind somebody else. You're going to get my opinion. And my sister wrote her own letter, and this sister today, actually at 3 o'clock, sent me an email saying, I'm coming tonight to speak. Oddly, she's going to speak. I'm going to cover some of the same points she did, but I just want people to be aware of that. So, under the piecemeal budgeting, it ties into our lawsuit. We have never had a discussion of the finances of the lawsuit. We're at $100,000 now for a round number. We have raised $28 million on the $28,000 on the GoFundMe. We are looking at, I estimated at the last meeting, $2 million to go all the way to the state Supreme Court. So I asked a question. Let's say I'm half right. Let's say it's $1 million. Where in any of your minds would this lawsuit rank compared to paving the roads, increasing the police department, fixing our parks, working on our pension costs? or the facility improvements that we all know we need here at the City Hall. Just $1 million would cover over 3 years' pension increases and may stop us from having to do a sales tax. So I'm urging my colleagues, we need to have a financial discussion of where we're going. We just can't keep spending money and keep finding money without getting the buy-in from the city here. Finally, I don't want to beat this to death, but that GoFundMe mistake was just that. And I don't know how we got there. I'd kind of like to get a report in the weekly down the road how we ever came up with a statement that 9,000 is paying a $100,000 bill. It just, I don't know how anybody could have made that mistake. And I'd like to know if we can have any type of procedure where maybe the Budget Standing Committee gets a copy of press releases, the mayor gets a copy of somebody gets a copy of the press release and catches these obvious errors, because it makes us look horrible. First of all, anytime we're looking incompetent, I don't want to be too close to that circle. But in this case, a cynical person could easily say we're trying to mislead the public, and our opponents are going to say that we're not telling the truth, and that's not what I think we're trying to do. This is a great group. We've worked up here. We're having a disagreement right now. We're still colleagues. We ate dinner. Everybody gets along. It's really about how we spend our city's money right now, and I believe that we're spending it incorrectly, but I think we should have a discussion of what the costs are going to be and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hasselbring.
I've attended the League of California Cities, the Orange County Division meeting in Dana Point a couple weeks ago. The head of Department of Transportation for San Diego was talking about the unmanned cars. They're here, they're coming faster, and there are going to be impacts on cities once they get all the kinks out. No more parking tickets, no more speeding tickets, because these unmanned cars have a set of rules put in them and you don't break the rules. So it's really about what's going to be happening in the next 3 to 5 years as they roll these out. There's a number of manufacturers that are doing these now. I attended the funeral for Eric Bowman. Eric Bowman was a teacher at Los Alamitos High School. He passed away at the age of 54. He left his wife and 3 children, ages 13 and twins of 11. He was the assistant football coach and wrestling coach at Los Alamitos High School, lifelong teacher over there, and his funeral was quite inspiring, and you could tell he was very well loved. Did attend the chamber breakfast for the candidates forum. That was very, very well done. The chamber pulled that off very well. Great atmosphere. Everybody was able to say their platform, and the businesses were able to get to know all the candidates a little bit better. Did attend the League of California Cities conference last week in Long Beach. Their main hot topics include the homelessness. They did a number of sessions on the recovery after the wildfires, pension, and also the sales tax initiatives for financial stability. Attended the State of the District last Friday. Talked a lot about the Measure G bond that they have coming up on the November ballot. And on Friday, I attended the Honoring Our Fallen Golden Boot Gala. Honoring Our Fallen is a local organization here. Laura Herzog has started this, and she basically assists the families of fallen soldiers and walks them through the process of getting the remains back home, arranging the funeral, and any of the military ceremonies that go along with that. It's an amazing organization that she also does post care for the widows and the mothers of the fallen soldiers, and it's just a tremendous organization. I was very happy to be able to support that. And I'm also very excited. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 3 really cool businesses open up here for our little tiny city. We've had the Sims Kansas City Ribs. We had Wahoo's Fish Tacos open up on Saturday. And once we stuff our bellies with that, we have the I Love Kickboxing that just opened up over by Catella Deli. So you can have some good food and then go beat up a punching bag, and this is all in Los Alamitos, and I think it just says a lot to people wanting to come in and do business in our city, and I think that's good, and that's healthy, and that's exciting. That's it.
Good deal. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So I got to attend the Eagle Court of Honor for 3 Eagle Scouts, Tobin Torres, Ryan Hom, and Adrian Leung over here at Good Shepherd. They were part of Troop 658, and I do have some ties to that. My kids were in the Cub Scouts version of that organization, so it was a really good ceremony. They earned their Eagle rank by various public or civic duties, civic volunteering. And out here last week, I was able to host, as a private citizen, the National Plug-in Day, and that's where all the drivers of electric cars can come and show the cars. And we had members of the public that were interested in cars that had stopped by and were getting educated and asking all the benefits of that. So while we have driverless cars, we're driving electric cars here and avoiding any kind of carbon carbon output, any greenhouse gases, as best we can. Those of us that have solar, we can generate our own electricity, charge up batteries, and then not pollute. And there are tax benefits to that, as well as time when you're able to commute in the carpool lanes. So we had that out here. And I wanted to say thanks to the city, Emmeline, who helped coordinate with some of the you had staff out here, so the shout out to Erica and to Ben, who came by. Very helpful with setting up some of the facilities that we used, and then cleaning up afterwards. It was a really good day, and so next year look for us. I'll try and do this again. Hopefully I can rent the City Hall parking lot. It will stay small enough for that. Roughly about 35 cars came, and then I think some people got to go for rides. But it's a good event. If you want to know anything about electric cars, by all means, come and see me. Now, I do want to kind of add some comments about some of the things talked about, and I think that in the candidates forum, it was pointed out that the ordinance that I wrote, and I'm an engineer, I'm no lawyer, but engineers can write specifications. We can read and interpret. So whether a lawyer wrote it or not, I think, and we still carried forward, I think we still be in the same situation. So I think lawyers just end up getting us in trouble. So you kind of got to think about that, right? Why do lawyers have bad reputations? Because we're being sued by a lawyer, and I don't see the gentleman here, but he's a lawyer. He's suing us, and I find it very hypocritical that he's going to stand in front of us and tell us that we're wasting money when he is the cause of the lawsuit that we have to go and expend to defend against it. Now, whether he's right or wrong, we'll grant him that, but he kind of gives us that leeway. Whether we're right or wrong, he's going to cost us, the city, money to defend against his lawsuit because he believes that we did something wrong. And so, but he's saying whether it's right or wrong, it'll all come out. So a taxpayer, a resident in the city, is costing us the money that we have to expend to defend ourselves. And then to my colleagues here, I'm going to say, this is not an immigration thing. This is absolutely local control. And if you don't want to assert local control, then why are you running? Because this is the chance to stand up to Sacramento, that they are out there doing things to us that cost us money, that they take away so much of our rights to attend to our municipal affairs. So if you're not in for standing up to Sacramento, why do you run? Why are you here? Why do you want to sit in the seat to make those tough decisions? And I appreciate those members of the public that come here and have wants and needs. We all have wants and needs to our neighborhoods, right? There have been capital investments that go on, and they're on cycle. I know we've done a very good job as best we can given the limited resources, but we are facing a pension crisis. But I'm going to tell you, the money that you think you're worried about on the pension crisis doesn't help. It's not going to help one part of this pension crisis that we're in, because decisions made years ago by people, not us, but again at the state and at the county, that decided that 3 of 50 was a good deal for a lot of people, that public servants are going to get a very handsome retirement. And that's going to be not on us here today. It's going to be on the backs of your children and you high school kids right there. It's on your backs that you're going to be paying for the pensions, that mistakes that were made before our time. So yeah, there's a structural defect in the pension funding, but the money that you think we're going to save by not fighting this, it's not going to help. And I think the thing is, do you want us here speaking up, standing and fighting for your rights as municipal affairs controlled that way? And if you don't, vote us out, vote me out. I'll be happy to step down if you think that let's just cede control to Sacramento. You want them to run everything? How well do you think they do? Look at the state and what the mess it's in, and look at what we have here because of the things that we've done as a council, and we have to fight back. So I'll say that to my colleagues. If you're not in there for the fight, then what are you here for? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple things. I also went to the League of Cities conference of Santa Long Beach last week with Councilmember Hasselbrink. I also wanted to report on the homeless progress that we're making right now. We're in the middle of an activity across the county with Judge Carter, and within this region, we've put together a group of people that we're working with, what is called the
it's the North Orange County Service Planning Area, the North Orange County SPLA.
And so what we're doing right now is we're trying to actually do our part with the homeless issue that's going on. Specifically, we're trying to identify beds for emergency situations, trying to identify resources. We're trying to partner and identify a regional homeless center that basically a bunch of cities can pull together and help with the cost of either construction and maintaining, and then with that, putting together an alliance with the county. There's also a Senate bill that's working its way through right now to actually put together a JPA that would actually help facilitate matching funds with the state of California. And I just want to report that this council's done a tremendous amount to focus on the homeless issue. As Councilmember Turco talked about, a lot of stuff that I focus on with Casa Youth Shelter is an emergency transition shelter for youth. But, homeless people aren't just youth, they're all ages. And so, the thing I would just put out there to everybody is that, some of us have been on the council for a long time. I've been on for 12 years. I've probably made 1,500 decisions. Some of them are really good. Some of them are probably bad. Some of them you'll agree with me, and some of them you won't. I appreciate whenever people come up in the community, whether they're people that are known in the community or whether you're unknown, and basically stating your opinion of where you feel on this. I think that's the way that we react good. I think the elections are something to think about, but I guess I want to make sure, too, to be responsive to some of the comments that were made. Think about this just for a moment. This city council that's been up here, some of the questions that get brought up, even up here from the dais from our colleagues say, hey, we're making bad decisions. We're crazy. We're on the crazy train, right? How can we do this to our city? But really, I'd ask for you to walk that one back a little bit. Think about this council. This is the council that has balanced the budget for 10 years. This is the council that basically refinanced or reorganized our financials, balanced our budgets, got our score to a AAA rating for bonds, and then refinanced all the debt in the city when the interest rates were at 1.5%. Okay, we're the same people that built our reserves up over $7 million when they were going down towards bankruptcy in 2008 and 9. So this is a council that's been very prudent with the money. We've got judgment. We're not on the crazy train. And through this whole process, we've said something from the very beginning when it was 4-1. And everybody in the community understand the dynamics, because it's a little confusing now when you're seeing a lot of people in the community talking about it. Now we're starting to squabble a little bit up here. But I would have to agree with Councilmember Murphy. It's nothing personal from us up here. We voted on something on April 16th to do the sanctuary law and actually codify that. That was a 4-1 vote. It was the 4 on this side. Councilmember Turco did not. Councilmember Murphy on the other end is having second thoughts on this for good reason. He's a CPA. He's looking at the finances. I don't have any issue with it. I don't have any issue with Councilmember Turco talking about, he's a lawyer. He sees where the process is. But trust me in something, that the majority of this council looked at this issue and with good judgment said, you know what, this is a problem for local control. And if you think about the local control has to do with what we do with the jurisdiction of our police. The charter issue that we're pursuing is basically we're telling the state, you're not going to commandeer our police department and tell us what to do. Whether they deal with ICE or not, that's our call. And if you're in this city, forgetting all the good financial stuff that we've done, think about what we've done for the police. Decisions that we made 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, last year, have been able to keep Part 1 crime at the lowest in Orange County. We're next to one of the highest Part 1 crimes right next door in Long Beach, right down the street in Santa Ana. We've been able to have our response times at the lowest in Orange County. How do we do this as a city council? We balance the ability to manage our resources, and we make decisions for 10 years out, more strategically. When Mayor Pro Tem Kusumoto says, hey, this is a local control, and why don't you just leave the keys and let Sacramento do it? Look, if I personally didn't feel as strongly about this, I wouldn't look, I have a track record of 12 years of soundness. If I think it's important, the community, I ask for you to trust that this council majority understands what we're doing. And we're not trying to be divisive. And like I said, I have mutual respect for the guys at the other end, and everybody in the community should hear all sides. I just want you to hear this side. Probably the other part of this is that, as we go through this process, we have always said, from April 16th, from March 19th, we said, look, if one of our residents sues us, which he did, and it goes to court, we will evaluate this at every stage. We will be prudent. So right now, a lot of us are all worried, and there was that mishap on the GoFundMe thing. That was embarrassing. I agree with that, But think about that. I feel so strongly about this. Not only did we appropriate money at the city, not only did two of us fly back and forth nationally because we were trying to see if we can get any money on our dime. We've probably spent our council salary, whatever that would be, for a year just to go on our own dime to represent our city, to try to help bring money back, whether it'll be successful or not. So that's personal. When we started hearing people outside the city wanting to donate to the city, the only way that we thought we could do that efficiently was a GoFundMe. It wasn't like we woke up in the middle of the night and said, hey, this would be really cool. Why don't we do this? Everybody's doing it. We did it. We set it up, and $30,000 came into the city. No one touches that. I set it up, and the only people that can pull money out of that is Maria Luisa over here in the finance department. She can go to the bank and pull money out of there. And look, personally, everything, we've tried to fundraise, we've tried to ease the burden, but I'm telling you, at the core, the majority of this council feels very strongly about this local control issue and our commitment to you. And you can vote about it if you really feel strongly. Look, I'm not running, and maybe that's unfair because then but my reputation and my legacy after 12 years means a lot to me too. And you know what? I really want the best for this community long after I'm here. And I really do believe that at a minimum, we need to go and at least have our first day in court. We've been in this lawsuit for 5 months. We got in, we took an action on April 16th, and on April 18th, our citizen from Los Alamitos sued us with the backing of the ACLU. And you know what? It's been 5 months and $100,000. And believe me, if you guys want to look at the history of 12 years, because I am the historian of my 12 years, we have a lot of lawsuits for a lot more money than that. So far, I understand the concern, and I'm not belittling it, but you know what? We haven't even been to court yet. So before we start getting to the point now, when we get through court and there's actually a judgment on this case, and we will have data, and this has been a data-based council. We don't make emotional decisions up here. We just don't. We have 12 years of history of not making emotional decisions. I would ask the community to be patient with us, allow us, the people up here in the majority are taking full accountability for our decision, but we're wise. We're not going to be crazy. This is not the crazy train. So again, I'll just leave with that. I hope, and by all means, even yesterday, I get 2 or 3 emails on both sides of this issue all the time. And you know what? I respond to both of them equally. We really appreciate your feedback. We really appreciate getting to where everybody's at. And at the end of the day, we work for you. And I will tell you personally, I get more people telling me that they really appreciate what we're trying to do than I get people telling me that they're really frustrated with what we're doing. And with that and with the data, we'll make the best decisions. Those are my comments. I'm going to go ahead and move on to items for the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. A couple of different announcements tonight. One, I want to thank Andy Perea, who's over here. He was our interim development services director. He's been with us for almost 5 months now, filling in, played a great role in leading the department and helping assist me and the city. And so, Andy, just want to personally thank you, and from the city, thank you for your great time here and wish you the best. This is his last week here. He's going to come back for the Planning Commission meeting next week, work with our new development services director, which I'll introduce you to in a minute. But thanks, Andy, and just a round of applause.
Andy, just a round of applause. Good job. Thank you.
And now I'm proud to announce our new development services director, who's sitting right next to Andy. He starts off his first day with a council meeting, and here he is, Les Johnson. And he comes to us from the Coachella Valley in the desert. He was the community development director at the city of Indio most recently. He's worked out in the desert for many years. He also worked for a small city for many years in the city of Washington, the state of Washington, and has just outstanding experience and just a great person. And proud to have him here as part of our team. So Les Johnson, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Les.
And then want to make an announcement about we're going to be having a celebration of the beautification of Los Alamitos and Los Alamitos Boulevard and grand opening. And Emmeline Noda and Ron Noda and their staff are working furiously on putting this together. And I wanted Emmeline to say a few words about it. We have a flyer that we've put out there, and we're going out to all the businesses. They walked Los Al Boulevard today on one side of the street. They're going to walk the other side of the street, trying to get the word out to the entire community. And we invite all of you to attend this event on November 5th. And with that, Emmeline, if you can give some more details about it.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. We have our celebration of the beautification of Los Alamitos, like City Manager said, on Monday, November 5th from 4:30 to 6 on Serpentine Drive off of Los Alamitos Boulevard. And we do invite the entire community to come celebrate with us. We'll be having some free food, popcorn, ice cream, performances, bouncers, games, and more. And we invite the business community and the nonprofits to come out. We do have an application for a complimentary booth space, and also to include in the event goodie bags, some promotional items, branding materials, and coupons as well. And this is also on our city website. And we just want to invite everybody to come out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Good deal. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the warrants. Do I have a motion for the warrants?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Edgar?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kusamoto?
Aye.
Councilmember Churko?
Aye.
Councilmember Hasselbrink?
Aye.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Alrighty. Next up, Agenda 11, consent calendar. All consent calendar items can be moved upon by one motion, or unless the council member would like to pull one of the items. Anybody would like to pull any of the items?
I'd like to pull B and F as in Frank.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion for the balance?
Excuse me one second, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
We had a citizen request one. Does
Yeah.
that count just the same?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So do you want to pull it? I'll pull it if it doesn't matter.
Either
to me.
one's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, can a citizen poll was really my question.
I think at this point we would have to pull the
All
item.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pull it then.
Okay, and was that H?
Courtesy,
H.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, so we got B, F, and H. Can I get a motion to move the balance?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We're going to move on to consent calendar item B. Councilmember Hasselbrink, adopt the ordinance of off-street parking and loading zoning ordinance amendment. Do you want a staff report?
I don't. I just had a couple clarifications, and this is just going back to a little bit on the report and then some history. On page 4 of 13 on the report, it's talking about, let me read it exactly, that vehicle as residence, vehicles or recreational items shall not be used either temporary or permanently for sleeping or living purposes. I understand the intent of that. I know in my neighborhood, and I don't have an issue with it because I know it is temporary. We have 2 houses they're basically remodeling it from the ground up, and they have their RVs, nice looking RVs, parked on their front lawn. One, it saves expense, so they don't have to go and rent a place. And 2, it's for a period of 3-4 months. So according to this, they would not be allowed to do that. Is that someplace that we're going to take, there's an exception to that for construction? Or it seems like really hard language when I understand what they're trying to do when somebody's trying to remodel. So I just kind of wanted a little bit of discussion on that.
Andy, can you help me with that one?
Currently, there's no exception in the proposed ordinance to allow for that type of a temporary use, but that is something that we could further review when we do our zoning code update.
So when these 2 residents, and I'm sure there's more, but in my neighborhood, there's one on Saratoga and there's one on Green. So when they went and pulled their permit, were they given that rule, or was it pointed out to them that they could not have an RV on there? And now what happens, because now I've just said, hey, everybody come over to my neighborhood, and there's 2 RVs there, are they going to get a code violation? They're in the middle of construction. One of them's almost done. One of them's just starting. We always try to find a way for residents, to say yes to them. And I don't want to go this hard line knowing that they're not setting up, a granny flat on their front yard. They're doing something with a very specific scope and time and everything. So I don't know, I just want to talk about it a little bit more.
What are the options for something like that?
Again, we can explore that a little bit further when we do the zoning code update and possibly carve out some exceptions for active construction activities on a property. And that is something that we can take a look at.
The only problem is, what's the timing on that?
We hope to come before the council before the end of the fiscal year. I'm sorry, yeah, before the end of the fiscal year, so sometime late spring with the zoning ordinance update.
So if we have 8 months of people potentially building that are going to be affected, is there any way we could put some sort of a moratorium or some sort of a wording in here that would be able to help people that might be in that situation? Because I've seen this before. I remember in the Highlands we had people that there was stuff going on there where they actually had to do construction and lived in a kind of RV.
I would defer the moratorium issue to the city attorney, but generally, if there is somebody who's doing this, it would have to be a code violation, and it would have to come generally from a neighbor who's reporting it because of some issue, maybe sanitation issues or something else. But they have a self-contained unit, and the neighbors are not reporting it. Generally, we're not going to be knocking on the unit to see if anybody's sleeping there. It would only really come to our attention if there was an issue in the neighborhood and it was reported by one of the neighbors.
Okay, I mean, I would like to further this as we go through the zoning update and everything, because I think it's a good idea as long as there's some time constraints on it. It's not 2 years of construction, it's a few months. It does save, the resident who's trying to make their home in our city look nicer. It does save them a tremendous amount of money instead of having to go and rent an apartment or rent another house. So I'd just like to pursue that to maybe make some sort of an exception as people per permits, and if that's an option.
Okay.
The other question that I had on this is, and back in the day, I'm over in Carrier Row, the houses were built in the 40s. Many of them were 1-car or 1.5-car garages, because back in the 40s, you usually had 1 car. You didn't have 5 cars. And there was an ordinance, and I'm not sure if it's still there. I was told by Steve Mendoza a couple years ago that we no longer had that. But then in reading this, that if you only had a 1 or a 1.5-car garage and you wanted to add any square footage onto your home, you would have to also include a 2-car garage. I was told that no longer exists, but in reading this, it's kind of unclear of whether or not that does exist or not.
The code would would require 2 parking spaces for any remodel to a home. One of the things we have talked about in our zoning code update committee is to allow some percentage of a remodel to occur on a house, so that you do not have to bring the entire site into compliance with parking. That is one of the issues that we talked about at one of our TAC meetings, our Technical Advisory Committee meetings, and the direction from that committee was, let's explore some opportunity to allow homeowners to make some improvements without having to bring the site into compliance with parking.
Because if, for example, we technically, with our 1.5-car garage, we can fit 1 car in there, and then we have 2 cars on the driveway. Mm-hmm. But it seems like on this, it has to be 2 cars in the garage. In order for those houses to do that, if we have a pool, we would have to get rid of our pool, put a garage in the back in order to add 100 square feet onto our house. And it seems like, in areas like that where we really want the houses to be upgraded and approved, but if you're spending $50,000 just on a garage, so you can go to, make code so you can add 100 square feet, people just aren't remodeling their homes because it's just cost exorbitant. So
that is some of the direction we received from the TAC committee, is to explore allowing for some percentage of an upgrade to a home without having to bring it in compliance.
As long as there's off-street parking, we're trying to, get rid of all the cars parked on the street. So just want to make sure that gets pursued as well, just in some of the older neighborhoods as well. So, and with that, I'll go ahead and move it.
All right, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item, F.
And then on F, I just had a quick question on this. It was recommended that we authorize the mayor to execute the amendment. We didn't have to go out for bid on this?
So for the community, this is amendment number 1, Data Ticket Inc. for parking citation processing.
Sean, Captain Connolly has worked on this staff report.
On this, last year we compared services when our prior vendor basically went out of business, and in evaluating that and another similar service were actually able to save money from our prior vendor, and it was very similar, and we were comparing the various services that were offered there. So we did a comparison with another vendor when we extended that, and then based on a couple of the other circumstances, such as our other Westcom cities using that, thought that there would be an opportunity maybe to look at doing something together as we progress in the CAT-RMS rollout, that perhaps utilizing scale, and that was an opportunity that we wanted to explore.
So we were not required to go out to an RFP or a bid. We were basically able to say they're preeminently qualified and get the sole source that way.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we're completely transparent in why we wouldn't RFP this and we would RFP something else for about the same cost.
Councilmember Hasselberg, I think what Captain Collins was telling you was that it isn't a sole source, but it is for a lack of being able to explain this is difficult, because one is that really you only have about 2 types of providers that we had that could provide this service to us. One is actually providing a higher level of service, which is this data ticket, and then and the other issue is that the sole source comes in when we wanted to have all 3 agencies to actually utilize all the same ticket service that would match with our CAT-RMS. There wasn't another provider available to do that. So in that regard, yeah, it is a sole source.
So do we have a document that's the sole source? I don't want to come back with any protests from competitors that weren't even given the opportunity. And if we have it documented that we sole sourced it because they were preeminently qualified or whatever, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're clear and transparent of why we didn't go through a regular bid or RFP process.
And and the other issue is that we were just extending the contract that was in place initially.
Okay.
For the 2-year extension, and then that would end after 2 years. But we'll provide you with that in a Wednesday report if you need it.
So our procurement ordinance is very specific on stuff like this. So if I think it is a binary yes/no question, and if you guys are aligned, then I would think that we're okay. You've looked at the contract, you know the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm okay with it on the basis that it's an extension of a pre-existing PSA.
Okay, that's just one clarification on that. All right, I'll move that.
Okay, and I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item on here, this is item H. This was the one that Dean Gross had asked, and Richard Murphy pulled. This was called Fiscal Year 2017-18 Results and Fund Balance Reservations. I guess, City Manager, just a real quick staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is results from the end of last fiscal year, ending June 30th, 2018, fiscal year 17-18, and fund balance reservations and recommendations based on our fund balance policy that are included in the report. And we met with the Budget Standing Committee, went through the process, explained how our fiscal year ended. Within the report, we explain where we end up, the fund balance reserves, where we ended up with the revenues greater than original budget, expenditures ended up a little bit higher than budget, and we go through all of the explanations that are in there. Based on the fund balance policy, we established a 25% reserve level, so we transferred additional monies out of 17-18 into that particular category so that we meet the 25% reserve requirement, and we've transferred additional reserves into internal service funds based on one-time revenues received, one-time transfers into these reserves. And we can go into more detail with the additional staff report from the Finance Director, Maria Luis Valdez, if you would like more of a report.
Okay, so Councilman Murphy, you pulled this kind of on behalf of somebody that had pulled it or wished that we had pulled it. Did you have any questions? And I guess what I would ask the council, we don't normally have to open up for something on this, but I really don't mind if that's something that the council is okay with. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, you're an open public comment.
Yeah, that's going to go ahead. So Dean Gross, if you would go ahead and ask your questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Sure.
Members of the council. I had an opportunity to read the staff report on this, and I'm confused. And I wanted to clarify, since I was on council at the time some of these policies were put in place. And I'm talking specifically about the police department and the equipment. Since I've been off council, I believe maybe at the last year that I was on council, we went to leasing vehicles, which I understand. But in reading this report, it seems like that process of leasing equipment and other equipment needed by the police department has kind of been lumped together. And what started this was when the request came in for $70,000 to $80,000 out of reserves for the 800 megahertz radios. And I remember at the time raising the question, how long had the city known that there was going to be this increase? And I was told that it's been at least 5 years. And my question at that time was, why weren't we setting money aside rather than having to hit the reserve fund for $70,000 or $80,000? And that I would agree with supporting that as long as we set up a system where the police department's budget refunded that $70,000 to $80,000 out of their budget to be prepared in 20 years to have to replace that Motorola equipment a second time. And in reading the staff report, I don't see that in there. And I'm concerned that what has happened is that we've taken all police equipment and supplies, put them all into one place. And I think the spirit and intent that we had at the time that we approved that policy was that there would be a maintenance type fund for money for replacement of equipment. And I believe they said it would be about a 20-year period for the Motorola equipment. That was the lifespan of the equipment, so that the council 20 years from now wouldn't be forced or faced with having to come up with $70,000, $80,000. If that's still in there and still part of the policy, then I'm fine. But I can't see it based on the staff report.
So let me do this. I'm going to ask the city manager, and then I'm going to ask the budget ad hoc committee to potentially weigh in on that. City manager.
Yeah, the answer is, Mr. Gross, we still do have those internal service funds set aside. The particular recommendation, this one particular recommendation, the vehicles and equipment fund is an internal service fund. We do transfer and charge all the other departments to transfer into this fund. And because we had positive financial news at the end of 17-18, the recommendation was to transfer an additional $100,000 into that fund. So we haven't disbanded, and in fact, we're just trying to make it more whole as much as we can. We still have the separate 800 megahertz as an internal service fund, and we're still charging the departments a contribution into that fund annually.
Anybody from the ad hoc want to add anything to that? Seemed like a pretty good explanation. Dean, any other questions that you might have? Okay.
That clarifies. I just wanted to make sure that what we had done 3, 4, 5 years ago is still in place and moving forward for whoever's on council 20 years from now.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Okay. With that item, we pulled it. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All righty. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So I think that handles the consent calendar items. We'll move on to the public hearings. Agenda item number 12, ordinance for updating regulations for accessory dwelling units to continue to comply with state legislation. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This will be the interim Development Services Director's last staff report, and Andy Perea will be giving that report.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The proposed ordinance before you this evening implements minor changes to the city's accessory dwelling unit ordinance, or ADUs, to bring our ordinance into compliance with state law. The proposed amendment allows for an ADU to be constructed simultaneously with a newer or expanded single-family residence, and allowed when the ADU does not exceed 50% of the size of the existing or proposed single-family residence, or 1,200 square feet, whichever is less. These changes will bring our ordinance into compliance with the state law. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. We'll bring it back to the council. Any comments or questions?
Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
Specifically for Andy. So Andy, can you clarify, I think there's been some confusion perhaps in the community about this ordinance and the accessory dwelling units, about where the directive is coming here. That, you know, this is not something that the city of Los Alamitos decided to enact out of the blue, right?
Right. The state of California has said that accessory dwelling units are permitted in all residential zones, even in an R1 single-family zone. So we're mandated by the state to implement an ordinance to provide for these accessory dwelling units.
Okay, and then if you could just provide a summary. I looked at all the changes, which look relatively minor. What is the practical effect of these changes, if really any?
Really, there's not any significant changes because we've not had any applications before us yet. We've talked to people who are interested in constructing ADUs, but we've not received an application yet. What this will do is if somebody is building a new single-family residence and wants to build an ADU at the same time, they can do so. Previous law required there to be an existing residential property on site before you added an accessory dwelling unit. So this just allows somebody who's proposing to build a new home or expand their home to build the ADU at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I'd just make a comment to the community. So a lot of people, you know, it's been a while since we've had this come up, but I think what usually ends up happening in the community is that, you know, for everybody out there, the ADU is the granny flat in the backyard that somebody builds. And, you know, if you go to Santa Monica or you go to some other cities where they allow stuff like this, and long before we now have to do it, the quality of life issue is parking and density. And so, you know, if you're in your community and somebody rents the house across the street from you and they sublet to 4 other people and each person there has multiple cars, next thing you know is that you have a lot of people parking over across the street. And then eventually more of these kind of come through these ADUs, and then we end up having a problem with density. You know, you can argue the other side of this, which is, you know, we have a housing shortage and we have a hard time with people being able to get affordable housing. So this is an alternative. And I guess I would just make one connection to what Mayor Pro Tem Kusumoto said, which is, again, I think up to this point, the city has not been really in favor, and this isn't my vote. This is kind of how we've dealt with this issue over the years of having these as potential being built in the community, is that it hasn't been something that the neighborhoods have been really favorable for. So I think maybe Councilmember Turco clarifying into the community that this isn't something we're pushing for. This is an example, just like the local control issue for the sanctuary cities, is where the state has made a law, is forcing it down upon us. And in this one, they're telling us to do an ordinance, unlike we took it upon ourselves on the sanctuary side. But I just want to make the connection because I think it's very appropriate at this point. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So, on this one, I've studied a little bit when it first came out and when it first was signed into law, and my understanding, and maybe you can help me understand if I don't really interpret it correctly, Andy, but one can turn one's garage and wall off the other parts of their house and call that an accessory dwelling unit and rent it out. And so I think, again, what the mayor says, it goes back to local control. We would not allow that in our city, but now we have no choice. So I can take half my house and seal it off and rent it as an accessory dwelling. We can turn mudrooms, you know, basements if we have those, attics. Those can also be considered accessory dwelling units. And the city, where we would normally try and regulate that for the quality of life issues, and you can call it NIMBYism, but, you know, not in my backyard, but that's really not what it is. It's really because we've got emergency responders, we've got police that would have to get there. We've got, ambulatory services. And these things that kind of come up could start impacting neighborhoods. And then the parking, again, in those areas that are impacted by parking, you know, get ready, because your neighbors can actually turn a portion of their house into an accessory dwelling unit. We cannot regulate that. And lo and behold, you're going to start seeing density increases. Now, the other thing that's coming on the books, I guess near bus stations and train depots, and that they're going to mandate that we allow high-density housing. So the scrunched-in triple-story kind of buildings that we may not necessarily want in our city, if it's near a bus station, we have no ability to regulate those. So I don't know, is that fair, Andy, or less is, yeah, so those things, we can't, and we don't know it, and yet it's perfectly legal. So I think that's the, again, overreach by Sacramento, and these things, at what point do we stop? Or at what point do we cede and say, hey, let's just stop being a city with municipal, cognizance over our municipal affairs, and let's say, hey, tell us what we get to do and what we don't get to do. So anyways, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, a couple.
Councilmember House.
I read in there that it's, none of these granny flats or ADU units are for short-term housing, temporary, 30 days or less, I believe, for rentals.
Correct.
So you couldn't Airbnb it.
Correct.
Basically. How do we monitor that?
Again, that would have to be on a complaint basis, or if we saw an ad posted on social media.
Okay, because we're not a destination city, I get that, but we do have an Airbnb in Los Alamitos, I looked. So, how do you monitor that? It's kind of like the sober living homes, unless you get a complaint, and by the time we get a complaint, it's really ugly. So I just didn't know how we were going to monitor that. And then also about the converted garage. So we just passed an ordinance that says you have to have a two-car garage with a working garage door opener in order to be compliant with our code. And now we're saying, well, no, you can go ahead and convert that garage and have your mom live there or something. So are we conflicting ourselves? I mean, and I know this is a state mandate thing, but we have now two ordinances that are going to be in direct conflict with each other, and what prevails?
Correct. Well, they both would prevail, depending on what they're doing. If it's a single-family home without the ADU, they would have to have a two-car garage. If they are providing ADU, state law says you do not need to provide parking for that ADU. If you're within a half mile of a public transit line, and most our
everybody is.
neighborhoods are within half mile. So you could build ADUs without having to put any parking on site.
And then how do we deal with the areas that we have parking permits? They just get however many that address is allowed, or?
Yeah, that would not change. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Good deal. Thank you. Councilmember Murphy, do you have anything? No.
I do, but I'm going to say no.
Wow. Okay, we'll think about that.
We'd be here till midnight if I asked a question.
Okay. Okay. Okay, with that, then, go ahead. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing at this point. So anybody that has a perspective that they would like to share, please feel free to approach the podium. Okay. If seeing nobody, one more chance. If there's no one else that wants to speak on this, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing and bring it back to City Attorney. So if, to move this thing forward, is this just a standard reading? And so we'd make a motion for the ordinance?
It's great. You'd make a motion, and to the extent that carries, I'd read it in for the introduction.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that we approve this ordinance.
Second.
Okay. City Attorney, would you go ahead and read into the record?
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, before the City Council this evening is ordinance number 2018-07, entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Los Alamitos, California, approving zoning ordinance amendment 18-04 to amend Los Alamitos Municipal Code Section 17.38.150 relating to accessory dwelling units to be consistent with state law.
Yeah, so students that are in here, watch this, because probably a majority of us are going to vote yes for this, but we totally disagree. Okay? That's called a state mandate, but we don't have a choice. So I just, it's just, this is being able to see civics in action. So this is called a stuff down from the state, and you're able to see this happen. So all in favor, say aye.
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 I will abstain.
Okay, 4. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on the adjournment. We actually have one item that we need to finish off in closed session. City Attorney, so if you could take us into closed session, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will now reconvene into closed session to discuss item 3F as listed on your agenda.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you guys need stuff signed? You can bring it on out.